It's the calm before the storm. The sky suddenly blazes bright as if the sun itself is trying to break free from the heavens. Two swords collide with such force that the impact forms a new star in the sky. The battle between Yeon-myeong and Yu Giljun intensifies, and the destruction they're causing is nothing short of catastrophic. The very earth seems to tremble beneath their fury. For a moment, it looks like Yu Giljun has the upper hand. Yeon-myeong is being pushed back, barely holding his ground. His sword is starting to show signs of wear, cracking under the pressure as Yu Giljun grabs it with a brutal grip. In a flash, Yeon-myeong loses his hold on the sword and is sent flying. Yu Giljun doesn't miss the opportunity. He hurls Yeon-myeong through the air, and the impact sends him crashing straight through a mountain. The explosion of force creates a massive hole in the mountain, a reminder of just how hard Yeon-myeong was thrown. He's clearly hurt, but knowing Yeon-myeong, this isn't the end of him. Not by a long shot. But then Yu Giljun, fully consumed by his delusions, begins to channel the subduing righteous divine art like it's some kind of dragon's breath. Yeon-myeong watches in disbelief as Yu Giljun, thinking of himself as a dragon, releases a blast of dark energy aimed directly at him. If anything, he looks more like a mountain goat pretending to be a dragon, but the power of the blast is undeniable. The breath lands with a direct hit on the mountain, and Yeon-myeong is momentarily stunned. He realizes with shock that Yu Giljun isn't even operating within the realm of martial masters anymore. No, this man is in a whole new league, a realm above him. If Yeon-myeong had been even a second slower, that blast would have ended his life. The mountain splits in half with a terrifying rumble, all from that ridiculous dragon breath attack. Yeon-myeong grits his teeth, trying to get his mind back in the game. That fake dragon burp threw him off for a second, but he knows he needs to counterattack fast. It's a now or never moment. But then something strange catches his attention. Yu Giljun is nowhere to be seen. Snaky manifests and urges Yeon-myeong to look up. Yeon-myeong, stunned, tilts his head and can hardly believe his eyes. Yu Giljun is soaring into the sky like he's just been crowned the king of the world. Yeon-myeong raises his sword, though it's barely hanging together at this point. Yu Giljun lands in the sky and with a smug grin reveals two dark snakes coiled in his palm. He tells Yeon-myeong that this is his venomous martial art, the Black Palm technique. It's the legacy his brother left him, but honestly, the technique in its original form was more embarrassing than legendary. Even calling it third-rate would be generous. Yu Giljun flies higher and continues his rant, calling his brother's martial art trash. He claims it makes sense since it was created by a lowlife from an evil sect who never bothered to learn proper martial arts. Yeon-myeong can't help but roll his eyes. I mean, really, the guy's literally trash-talking his own brother. Yu Giljun's not done. He proudly declares that he's modified the technique, turning it into something worthy of his name. Meanwhile, Yeon-myeong and Snaky are just blankly listening to him ramble, as if waiting for him to run out of words. The murky clouds around them darken and then suddenly burst into bright light, and just like that, the snakes launch toward Yeon-myeong, ripping through the sky like they're on a mission. Yeon-myeong's eyes widen. He wonders what the hell is going on. He never thought humans could transcend like this. Until now, the snakes fill the entire area, charging straight for him, and he realizes this is no ordinary fight anymore. If he doesn't act fast, he's going to end up as part of Yu Giljun's twisted new technique. Yu Giljun looks down at Yeon-myeong with a twisted grin and announces that what he's about to face is his ultimate technique, the Black Snake Palm. Yeon-myeong's heart skips a beat. He's in a tough spot, the kind of situation where you can feel your palms sweat and your instincts scream for you to run. But instead, Yeon-myeong stands firm, his eyes locked on Yu Giljun as the dark energy snakes swirl around him. Snaky, always the voice of reason, warns Yeon-myeong that even he would be torn apart by the Black Snake Palm if it hit him directly. In other words, this attack is not something anyone should take head-on. The best advice is to get out of the way fast. But Yeon-myeong isn't about to back down. He tells Snaky to gather his venomous energy, no hesitation. Snaky freezes for a moment, surprised by the audacity of Yeon-myeong's request. Then, in a mix of disbelief and concern, he tells Yeon-myeong that he's completely lost it. Taking that attack head-on? It's madness. Yeon-myeong, however, doesn't flinch. He explains that if the Black Snake Palm were to hit the ground, it would devastate everything in its path, shaking the entire terrain, with countless innocent lives at risk. He has no choice but to break through it. There's no room for hesitation. He's in it now, and there's only one way out, by facing this attack head-on. Yeon-myeong insists that he has a plan and tells Snaky to pass him the venomous energy. Snaky, still shocked, is at a loss for words. Snaky wonders where in the world is Yeon-myeong getting this unfounded confidence from. But as usual, he doesn't argue and simply transfers the venomous energy to Yeon-myeong. This is the only way to make the impossible possible. With the venomous energy coursing through him, Yeon-myeong feels a surge of power from his past life, something ancient, something that could shift the tides. He thinks to himself that if these dark snakes are flying with some kind of martial technique, then he should be able to counter it with his true power. But even as the energy swells inside him, Yeon-myeong knows this won't be easy. To neutralize something this overwhelming, just using his annihilation technique won't cut it. He'll need something stronger. One strike. One perfect final strike to pierce through Yu-Giljin's core and take him down for good. But there's a catch. He's not sure if his body can handle the strain. And then, of course, there's his sword. It's already on the edge, and with one more strike, it might just break apart. Just as the dark snakes close in on Yeon-myeong, he leaps into the air, bracing himself for the incoming storm. His technique, inspired by the image of a red sun against a blue sky, gathers all of his focus into one perfect, piercing strike. It is the perfect martial arts of piercing. He lands gracefully, the power of his perfected martial art surging as it pierces the air toward Yu-Giljin. Up in the sky, Yu-Giljin watches, his eyes narrowing at the devastation the snakes have caused. For a moment he's distracted, and that's when the flashback hits. He's suddenly pulled back to a memory from his past. It's a quiet scene. A young Yu-Giljin caught red-handed, stealing grain from the villagers. He is eating raw rice, his face hollow, gaunt. The boss, a gruff figure, tells the boy that someone his age should never resort to stealing. He calls him hopeless. But then someone else speaks up. An older man tells the boss to take a good look at the boy's condition. The thief is malnourished, barely holding himself together, hiding behind a log. The boss's eyes soften as he watches the boy, realizing that desperation, not malice, is driving him. They stare at each other, neither knowing what to say next. The old man breaks the silence, his voice warm but tinged with a bit of humor, saying that at this rate, people will think the Black Death Alliance is running a foster home. The boss sighs. He calls Yu-Giljin a brat, but then tells him that he doesn't need to steal, that he can eat to his heart's content, no need for petty crime. It's a rare kindness, a brief glimmer of humanity in a harsh world. Yu-Giljin remembers that moment exactly like it was yesterday. That same boss, despite calling Yu-Giljin a third-rate loser back then, took him in, gave him a name, made him part of his family, and even taught him the black snake palm technique. Sure, it was crude, a trash martial art, as Yu-Giljin liked to say, but it was all he had. Even when the boss died, he left his most precious daughter in Yu-Giljin's care, asking him to be a support, just like he had been for him. But now in his twisted mind, that past felt like a lifetime ago. His anger at the world grew, but so did his resolve to become strong. His goal had shifted. He now sought to erase everything tied to his brother and daughter's deaths. His past, his family, meant nothing anymore. What mattered was the power he now sought to control, and nothing would stand in his way. Back in the present, from the dark swirl of his snakes, a sudden flash of bright light bursts forth, cutting through the venomous energy like a cross of pure force. The light rips apart the dark snakes, and Yu-Giljin is struck with disbelief. He stares in shock, unable to comprehend how Yeon-myeong managed to withstand the attack. Yeon-myeong charges at Yu-Giljin with his sword raised high, and with a single powerful strike, he uses the sky-piercing sun strike, slicing through Yu-Giljin like a hot knife through butter. The impact is so intense that it nearly cuts Yu-Giljin in half. He stumbles back, looking down at his injured arm in shock. Meanwhile, Snakey can't help but feel a cold chill run down his spine. Yeon-myeong's ability to pierce through such a fierce attack, using a technique that even in the time of his previous master would have been considered impossible, is nothing short of terrifying. Yeon-myeong silently thanks his demon-slaying sword for its unwavering strength, though it's clear that even the sword is struggling to hold up. One arm. That's all Yu-Giljin has left, but he still has not defeated the Black Death Alliance leader yet. If he doesn't act now, he'll regret it. Leaping into the air, Yeon-myeong draws his dagger from his jacket, ready to end it once and for all. Yu-Giljin, taken aback by the sudden surge of energy, watches in disbelief as Yeon-myeong launches a flurry of attacks. The strikes are so fierce that they create a tornado glowing bright blue. Yu-Giljin tries to block, but the air dagger cuts through his defenses with ease. Yu-Giljin is unable to comprehend how Yeon-myeong can break through his guards so effortlessly. He grits his teeth, frustrated and determined. He refuses to fall here, not without getting his revenge. Yu-Giljin screams in fury, completely losing control. Yeon-myeong sees the rage boiling over and, like the sharp strategist he is, notices the opening. Seizing the moment, he strikes, his blade landing with devastating force. Time seems to slow as Yeon-myeong takes a precise swing, severing Yu-Giljin's remaining arm. The severed limb falls to the ground with a thud. But even with both arms gone, Yu-Giljin doesn't fall. His rage only grows, and he continues to press forward, relentless as ever. Yeon-myeong realizes how close he came to being stuck in an endless cycle. If the demon-slaying sword's energy hadn't chipped away at Yu Giljin's ki, he thinks they would be right back at square one, trading blows like they've been doing for hours. Despite his wounds, Yu Giljin stubbornly declares that he hasn't fallen yet. But Yeon-myeong, glowing with a deadly green aura, calmly tells him this is the price for messing with his family. With a grim determination, Yeon-myeong unleashes his venomous force. The attack is so ruthless that it creates a massive hole right through Yu Giljin's chest. Yu Giljin is left flabbergasted, unable to comprehend what just happened. His body begins to decay slowly, his energy fading as the venom takes hold. The fight is over, and for a brief moment feels like peace, if only for a second. Snakey, who has been nervously watching from behind, can't help but ask if Yeon-myeong just made up that last technique on the spot. Yeon-myeong doesn't even blink. He's been making things up on the fly for ages. It's practically his side hustle at this point. He casually explains that in a past life, he used the intent of fire dragon poison to create the blazing venomous force. The technique is as fiery and deadly as it sounds, but in Yeon-myeong's hands, it's just another day at the office. With a quick adjustment, Yeon-myeong pulls back, weapon sheathed, and releases a long breath. He feels the familiar weight of the battle lift from his shoulders. The fight is done, and yet something doesn't sit right. He feels sorry for the way things turned out, but there's no time for regret. He has a clan to protect, and regrets don't make themselves useful in combat. Turning to leave, he glances back at Yu Giljin, who is still somehow clinging to life, his body shuddering with the last vestiges of defiance. Yeon-myeong tells him that he never should have attacked his family. It's the kind of thing a person says after a fight, even though it's already way too late to make a difference. Yu Giljin, barely conscious, looks up, clearly about to make one last comeback. But let's face it, when you've lost both arms and most of your energy, your comeback options are pretty limited. Yeon-myeong walks away. Yu Giljin grits his teeth, muttering to himself that he refuses to die like this. Honestly, it's kind of admirable. Who wouldn't want to live long enough for some good old-fashioned revenge? But Yu Giljin's problem is that he's out of steam. There's only so much "I'll get you next time" a person can say before it starts to sound like a broken record. Still, the thought of killing Yeon-myeong doesn't leave his mind even as blood clouds his vision and his strength fades. It's almost poetic in a tragic way. He's going to die with killing intent in his eyes. Nice dramatic touch, but it won't make him any stronger. If only killing someone was as easy as getting worked up. Meanwhile, Yeon-myeong, completely oblivious to the lingering drama behind him, checks his body for injuries. He counts himself lucky that nothing important is missing. No arms, no legs, no major blood loss. Honestly, it wouldn't have been surprising if he woke up after this fight missing a limb or two. Some of the techniques he had to use were pretty over the top after all. But for now, he's still in one piece, which is a win in his book. He may have broken a few things along the way, but at least his body isn't one of them. With a final glance back at the battlefield, he heads toward the Tang clan. It's all in a day's work. A very, very exhausting day, but still work. Yeon-myeong turns to Snakey and asks for a little more venomous energy. Snakey, who's been on the verge of throwing in the towel for ages, is not pleased. He gets fired up, practically shaking his fist at Yeon-myeong, telling him that venomous energy doesn't just fall out of the sky whenever you feel like it. The guy's been running on empty for a while now and starting to show. Yeon-myeong gives Snakey a cheeky look and asks if he wants to go back to the jar. Snakey, a little flustered, quickly backpedals and says it's not that he's saying no. It's just that he needs a bit more time to brew up some more venomous energy. But before Snakey can finish his sentence, Yeon-myeong grabs him by the neck. Not in a loving embrace, but with a little more force than necessary. He demands Snakey spit out the venom because let's face it, who has time for this nonsense? Just then, Yu Giljin, now looking like a grotesque dragon hybrid with yellow, jagged teeth that you wouldn't even trust to bite into a soft pretzel, makes his move from behind. Yeon-myeong's reflexes kick in as he spins around just in time to take the full brunt of the attack. He blocks with both hands, but Yu Giljin, in his new form, is a mess of fury and decay. It's like the dragon transformation went horribly wrong, like a before picture for a mythical creature makeover. Yeon-myeong is floored. He's shocked that Yu Giljin survived the venomous force that pierced through his chest. He wonders how he is still standing. But as Yeon-myeong watches the creature struggle, he realizes something. Yu Giljin is clearly not the powerhouse he used to be. Sure, he's trying to act all dragony, but he hasn't fully transformed yet. Yeon-myeong knows that Yu Giljin won't be able to hold on much longer. Meanwhile, Snakey, who's been seething in frustration, manifests behind Yeon-myeong. He's had enough of the drama, and it looks like he's ready to go all out. His form flickers with energy as he prepares to launch a venomous breath strong enough to finish this once and for all. But Yeon-myeong, ever the voice of reason, stops him mid-launch. He doesn't need any more chaos. Yu Giljin's time is up. Yeon-myeong locks eyes with the now broken Yu Giljin. It's clear that the end is near. The monstrous dragon has already passed his limit. The venomous force has taken its toll, and there's no more fight left in him. His once proud form crumbles, and with his final moments, Yu Giljin apologizes to his fallen loved ones, regretting that he couldn't avenge them before his body gives out. Yeon-myeong watches him fall, his expression unreadable. Another battle won, but it's not the kind of victory that feels satisfying. As Yu Giljin's final cries echo through the air, Yeon-myeong's hard exterior begins to crack. His face, once steely and unwavering, falters, and the weight of the moment starts to hit him. He wonders if this is what real character development looks like, tears welling up as the situation hits harder than any battle he's fought. His body fades, and now, with Snaky growing even larger next to him, they both stare at the scene unfolding in front of their eyes. Yeon-myeong, still in the middle of figuring out his feelings, wonders aloud if the battle is finally over. Like he can almost hear the dramatic movie's soundtrack playing in the background. But before he can even begin to savor the silence of victory, something heavy lands on his head. And it's not a congratulatory pat from the universe. No, it's an actual thing, solid and sturdy. Yeon-myeong, clearly done with the day's events, looks up at the object, his face blank with confusion. His eyes widen as he mutters about its strange sturdiness. It looks like a horn, but not just any horn. Snaky, who always seems to know what's going on, casually explains that this horn is a big deal. It's imbued with dragon spirit, whatever that means. But apparently, it's perfect for refining something super powerful, like a new weapon or maybe a better version of his already pretty epic martial arts. But Yeon-myeong is silent. The thought of the horn doesn't seem to excite him as it should. Snaky mimics and, slightly annoyed, asks what's bothering him. Yeon-myeong finally speaks, his voice filled with regret, saying that if they had met under different circumstances, maybe it could have had a conversation about martial arts. Snaky, a bit confused, asks if Yeon-myeong is starting to feel sympathy for Yu Giljin. Yeon-myeong looks away, the guilt evident on his face. He thinks back to when he first encountered Yu Giljin's daughter, how he'd seen the young girl in pain but didn't intervene. He had thought the conflict was just a matter of evil sex, a situation that didn't concern him. He could have easily disarmed Lady Yeo and resolved the problem. In his arrogance, Yeon-myeong had believed that he could fix it any time if it even came to that. But now, looking at the results of his complacency, the death of the child, the grief of the innocent, he realizes how wrong he was. He should have acted sooner. Snaky, visibly frustrated, gives Yeon-myeong a sharp look. He snaps, reminding him that the Black Death Alliance and the Tang family were never meant to coexist. There's no room for sentimentality or second-guessing when lives are on the line. Yeon-myeong needed to understand that some conflicts were inevitable, and sometimes people's paths were too far apart to ever meet again. Yeon-myeong, though filled with guilt, knows Snaky is right. The tragedy of it all is that, for all his strength and all his power, he was blind to the true nature of the world around him. The battle might be over, but the weight of his decisions will follow him for much longer. Yeon-myeong, still feeling the weight of his past decisions, tells Snaky that if only he had been more cautious of Lady Yeo's flame art, he could have done something to avoid this mess. Snaky, never one to let Yeon-myeong wallow for too long, waves it off. He tells him not to dwell on mistakes because, it's human nature to slip up every once in a while. Even his ancestor, the so-called Azure Dragon Slayer, had judged the Azure Dragon as evil and slayed it. Turns out that mistake nearly caused the entire continent to descend into chaos. However, after his ancestor took down the wrong dragon, he took its place and started hunting the evil ones and kept the peace. Easy peasy. The moral of the story is one can reflect on why they failed, but dwelling on it won't help them. What matters is what kind of person one becomes after their failings. Yeon-myeong, still processing, looks a little stunned by Snaky's wisdom, or maybe he's just really tired of hearing about dragon-slaying stories. Either way, they start rushing toward the Tang family at full speed. Yeon-myeong, trying to distract himself from the inner turmoil, asks Snaky what that powerful form earlier was. He wonders if Snaky had started with that form, the battle could have been much easier. Snaky shoots him a deadpan stare and explains that he had used every last drop of his venomous energy to keep Yeon-myeong alive, so he couldn't use that form from the start. Yeon-myeong, with an expression that can only be described as a mean face, reluctantly nods and saying okay. Snaky, with his usual flair for the dramatic, can't help but mutter about how ungrateful Yeon-myeong is. He sarcastically remarks that a simple thank you would have been appreciated, considering all the trouble he went through to keep Yeon-myeong alive. Yeon-myeong, not one to back down from a challenge, turns to Snaky with a smirk and says, "Thank you." Snaky's face freezes for a moment, caught off guard by Yeon-myeong's unexpected gratitude. For a second, he's speechless, but then his expression softens. Yeon-myeong goes on to explain that after that near-fatal attack from the Alliance leader, when he lost consciousness, Snaky had stepped in and used his venomous energy to save him. Without Snaky's help, Yeon-myeong would have taken a fatal blow right there, so he figured a thank you was in order, even if it was a bit late. As Snaky listens, his usual smug grin fades into something closer to surprise. He'd always thought of Yeon-myeong as rigid and ungrateful, like a knight in shining armor who never says thank you because it's beneath him. After all, his previous owner had always taught him that gratitude wasn't something to expect when you're just a tool doing your job. But now, seeing Yeon-myeong's sincerity, Snaky's caught off guard. His mind races and he starts thinking maybe, just maybe, he's been wrong about this guy. He jokes asking if Yeon-myeong has gone soft from all the recent battles. Yeon-myeong, not missing a beat, shoots back asking if Snaky wants to be sent back into the jar. With a quick chuckle, Snaky plays it off, saying he was just joking, though there's a hint of warmth behind his words. Meanwhile, back at the Tang family's compound, things aren't looking any better. The ground is littered with hundreds of dead bodies, a grim testament to the chaos that's unfolded. Tang Yeon-myeong, Yeon-myeong's mother, is locked in a fierce battle with a Baldy, her sword clashing against his with equal force. She's holding her own, dodging and attacking with grace, but Baldy is relentless. With a swing of his sword, he catches her off guard, and Tang Yeon-myeong stumbles, almost losing her balance. She quickly regains her footing, scanning the battlefield for any sign of backup. She wonders where are the other grandmasters. She knows she has to finish the fight quickly, before reinforcements from the other side show up. But just as she's about to make her move, Baldy takes advantage of her split-second distraction and lands a brutal blow to her back. Tang Yeon-myeong crashes into a nearby house, the force of the impact leaving her severely injured. Baldy, poised to strike, sneers down at the injured Tang Yeon-myeong, confident that victory is near. He taunts her, saying there's no point in worrying about his reinforcements. They are on the way and right now are busy to break through the formation. Once they do, along with other grandmasters, more troops will arrive, and soon after that, their leader will arrive here after taking care of her son. But just as he swings his sword to deliver the final blow, there's an unexpected interruption. One of the guards, barely holding it together, sacrifices his arm to block the strike. The guard, wincing in pain, manages to stall Baldy's momentum just long enough. Tang Yeon-myeong, amazed at this selfless act, looks up, questioning why the guard would sacrifice himself like this. He explains with quiet determination that he's been serving the disgraceful elders for so long that now at least he can die with some honor. Baldy isn't impressed. He decides to kill them both. However, before anything else can happen, Baldy freezes, sweat suddenly dripping from his forehead. A sense of dread crawls up his spine. Someone is standing behind him, and this man has godly aura. He turns around, feeling an immense, suffocating pressure bearing down on him. The once confident warrior now looks more like a frightened little Barbie doll with a shiny bald head. The battlefield goes silent, and every single person turns to see the source of the overwhelming pressure. It's none other than Yeon-myeong standing tall, his presence radiating pure killing intent. His eyes lock onto Baldy, and there's no mistaking it. This fight is about to take a very deadly turn. Baldy, eyes wide with disbelief, looks around in panic. He sees the dismembered heads of his fellow warriors rolling across the ground, their lifeless eyes staring at him like a macabre greeting. His mind races. What is Yeon-myeong doing here? Standing in front of him like some unstoppable force of nature. Baldy can't help but think that this is some kind of sick joke, but deep down he knows it's not. Yeon-myeong steps forward, his presence cold and unnerving. He grits his teeth, almost savoring the moment. With a mocking tone, he asks Baldy if he's taking another look around. He points out that all the so-called grandmasters who were trying to break the formation are now dead, every single one of them wiped out without mercy. Yeon-myeong's voice hardens as he tells Baldy that while he'd love to take his head right now, he's feeling generous. He gives him one last chance to retreat. Poisonous energy pulses from his body, and it's clear that if Baldy chooses to stay, he'll meet the same fate as the Grand Alliance leader. Baldy's eyes go wide, his thoughts a jumbled mess. He can't even process what Yeon-myeong just said. He wonders if he was losing his mind. Baldy frantically tries to convince himself that something went wrong. Maybe there's some mistake. He realizes that the massive wave of energy he felt earlier must have been from Yeon-myeong's fight with Yu Giljan. But he's not ready to accept it. He stubbornly clings to the idea that Yu Giljan, with his terrifying power, could never lose to someone like Yeon-myeong. His mind spins in denial, and his voice starts to tremble. But then reality hits him like a ton of bricks. Yeon-myeong steps closer, his words ringing clear and cold. He confirms the truth. The mighty Yu Giljan was defeated by him, and Yeon-myeong had personally finished him off. A chill runs down Baldy's spine. His face goes pale, his hands shaking uncontrollably as the gravity of the situation sinks in. He drops his massive blade, the weapon clattering to the ground like a lifeless thing. His mind races, but it's too late. He knows he's lost. With a defeated sigh, he orders his men to stop fighting. There's no more point to this. He looks at them, his voice heavy with resignation as he tells them that Yu Giljan has fallen. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence, and the atmosphere grows even heavier as the soldiers stand still, uncertain of what comes next. The warriors of the Black Death Alliance are in a state of shock, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what just happened. The news of Yu Giljan's defeat at the hands of Yeon-myeong sends ripples through their ranks. One of the warriors, his voice shaking, expresses disbelief that the supreme master of the unorthodox path could be taken down by the young lord of the Tang clan. It's like something out of a legend. But Baldy, gritting his teeth, calmly explains that Yeon-myeong's survival of Yu Giljan's ultimate technique and his ability to eliminate 6 Fire Realm Masters, excluding Baldy, of course, proves that Yeon-myeong is more than a match for their once feared leader. At this revelation, the Black Death Alliance's soldiers visibly tremble. The fear spreads quickly, like a wildfire, and soon Baldy has no choice but to give the order to retreat. He tells his soldiers to fall back and leave their weapons behind. His voice cuts through the panic as his men, one by one, start fleeing, scrambling for their lives as if they had just realized they were facing an unstoppable force. Yeon-myeong watches them scatter, then glances at Baldy. With a curious smirk, he asks if Baldy is planning to run as well. Baldy, his posture stiff with resignation, admits that there's no point in escaping. With his brother's death and the loss of his sworn siblings, he knows survival is a lost cause. Still, his pride won't let him go down quietly. He's angry. He's determined. He draws his blade, ready to meet his end with honor. Yeon-myeong, respectful of the man's resolve, pulls out his dagger and nods. He tells Baldy to go ahead and attack, not hesitating for a moment. But in Baldy's eyes, there's a flash of regret for failing to protect his loved ones and a simmering anger at the injustice he feels. As he takes his stance, he remembers the pain, the betrayal, and the loss. With a furious roar, Baldy launches himself forward, his final strike fueled by rage. But in a blink, it's over. Yeon-myeong moves with lightning speed, his dagger slicing through the air so fast that no one even sees the attack coming. In an instant, Baldy is torn apart, his body falling to the ground in pieces. Even the warriors from Tang clan stand motionless, their faces a mix of awe and horror. They can't process what just happened. It's as if Baldy never stood a chance. His final attack, full of fury and hatred, was nothing more than a fleeting moment in Yeon-myeong's deadly grace. With that, the reign of the Black Death Alliance in Sichuan comes to a swift and brutal end, all in the span of a single day. One man, Yeon-myeong, has wiped out an entire faction with his strength, leaving the region in silence. Hours later in the main hall, Yeon-myeong summons the guard who had sacrificed his arm to protect Tang Yeon-myeong. The once two-handed warrior now stands before him, a faint smile on his face despite the pain. Yeon-myeong asks how he's holding up after losing an arm. The guard, his expression calm and steady, shrugs and replies that he was trained to use both hands interchangeably, so it doesn't bother him too much. Yeon-myeong understands the gravity of the situation but quickly dismisses the idea that he called the one-armed guard in for a simple checkup. No, he says it's not about that. The real reason he summoned him is because Yeon-myeong heard that the guard had lost his arm while trying to protect his mother. That kind of selflessness deserves proper recognition. The guard, still humble despite his sacrifice, calmly replies that he did it because it was his duty as a martial artist of the Tang clan. He sought no reward for his actions. Yeon-myeong, however, can't just let it slide. He recognizes the sacrifice even if their relationship hasn't exactly been smooth sailing. Merits, he says, must be rewarded. He looks the one-armed guard in the eye and asks if he's ever considered learning the sword. The question catches the guard off guard, literally. His face pales a bit, and he starts to shiver. But Yeon-myeong is calm and reassuring. He explains that with one arm, it must be difficult to throw daggers or handle poisons effectively. So Yeon-myeong offers him something far more valuable than just a pat on the back, a chance to learn a left-handed sword technique. He assures the guard that if he follows his teachings, he will become stronger than he ever was with both arms. No need to worry about the past. It's the future that counts now. The guard, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanks Yeon-myeong for the opportunity. He's still a bit shocked but deeply appreciative. However, Yeon-myeong just chuckles lightly and reminds him that, at the moment, it's the guard who is owed something, not the other way around. Once the guard recovers, they can get started on the training, and Yeon-myeong is confident that this new path will make him stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Jiggle is utterly exhausted. He was in charge of the formations around Tang clan, and having to hold off so many enemies on his own has wearied him thin. He starts crying, feeling overwhelmed, and begins to blame Yeon-myeong for the mess. Just then, Yang-myeong appears before him, cutting off his whining. The moment Jiggle hears Yang-myeong's voice, he freezes, his tears suddenly stopping as he tries to compose himself. He puts on a forced smile and tries to act like everything's fine, telling Yang-myeong how relieved he is that he's back safely. Yang-myeong, unfazed, tells him to cut the formalities. Jiggle's face goes red with embarrassment as he starts crying again, apologizing for what he said earlier. But instead of getting scolded, he's surprised when Yang-myeong praises him for his tireless efforts in maintaining the formation and holding back the enemies. Inwardly, Jiggle feels a little proud of himself, though the truth is he just wanted to run away when things got tough. But his niece, Yeon-myeong, had made sure he stayed put. She had told him that in times of crisis he should focus on solidifying alliances, not just running off. Even Mireo had gone out despite her exhaustion, just to buy them some more time. Jiggle tells his niece that if what they said is true, and Yeon-myeong had faced off against Yu Giljan, his chances of survival were very slim. But before he can say more, Yeon-myeong quickly shuts him down. She firmly tells him that she believes in Yeon-myeong, no hesitation, no doubt. Meanwhile, Yeon-myeong tells Jiggle that they'll support the recovery of the Jiggle clan. Jiggle is stunned by this offer, his gratitude overflowing as he thanks Yeon-myeong repeatedly. Yeon-myeong then takes the lead, saying that he'll handle things from here on out. Jiggle is so taken aback by the warmth in Yeon-myeong's words that it feels like his personality has done a complete 180. Before leaving, Yeon-myeong adds one last thing. If Jiggle ever considers deserting them again during a crisis, there will be repercussions. Jiggle's fake beard, yes, fake beard, falls right off at the mention of that. He stares in disbelief as Yeon-myeong walks away, reflecting that Yeon-myeong knew it all along. Yeon-myeong, meanwhile, thinks to himself that he's resolved most of the clan's issues, but there's one final task left to deal with. 2 days later, the squad led by Yeon-myeong enters the Black Death Alliance fortress. Woojin is absolutely floored by the sight of the place. He never imagined such a hidden treasure trove beneath the fortress. The wealth here is unimaginable. Piles of treasure so large, they make the squad look like ants in comparison. Woojin wonders aloud why the Black Death Alliance never expanded beyond Sichuan. Yeon-myeong, looking around, answers that it's because Yu Giljan, who ruled over the unorthodox sects, never needed to. He had everything he could want right here in Sichuan. He was living like a king, surrounded by wealth and power, and expanding would just be an unnecessary hassle. Yeon-myeong thinks to himself that when Yu Giljan recruited followers, he must have demanded treasures as collateral for martial arts. But in the end, Yu Giljan wasn't greedy. It was more about maintaining control and keeping the people who wanted his guidance in check. The treasure to him was just a formality. Like, show me the goods, and I'll show you my skills type of deal. Yeon-myeong then orders Woojin to take care of the place and move all the treasure to the main family's coffers. Woojin nods in agreement, ready to handle the load. Just as Woojin gets to work, Yeon-myeong decides to venture deeper into the fortress. In the depths of the fortress, Yeon-myeong stumbles upon a library, but it's eerily empty. Not a single book in sight, except he spots a set of books with a snake symbol on them. Intrigued, he picks one up, wondering what secrets lie inside. Yeon-myeong flips through the pages and finds that these are no ordinary books. They're Yu Giljan's martial arts manuals. And it's not just any martial arts. The first manual reveals a chilling philosophy Yu Giljan learned after years of ruling Sichuan. Repay kindness twice over, but grudges tenfold. Yu Giljan goes on to explain that he destroyed the Azure Fortress sect not just because they betrayed him, but also because he wanted to humiliate them by studying their martial arts and using it against them. Yeon-myeong continues reading and realizes that the manuals are full of counter techniques designed specifically to defeat the martial arts once practiced by the Azure Fortress sect. It's almost like Yu Giljan kept their entire style alive just so he could dismantle it piece by piece. Yeon-myeong stands in awe, marveling how Yu Giljan has managed to dismantle all those martial arts techniques using just a few manuals. His place was once the fortress of the Azure sect, home to countless books filled with knowledge. But through sheer arrogance, Yu Giljan has destroyed everything, every single book of theirs, and kept only his own martial arts manuals. To him, their books were filled with nothing but worthless techniques, so he modified them, refining and enhancing them until they became worthy of true mastery. After the battle with the Black Death Alliance, the Tang family begins restoring order to the chaos that has overtaken Sichuan. Meanwhile, a new conflict erupts in Qinghai, as the demonic cult seeks to push further into the Central Plains. The only force attempting to resist them is the Kunlun sect, which is currently engaged in a fierce battle with the cult. Leading the charge against them is one of the Kunlun elders, known as the demon immortal Gokun. A master of the fire realm, Gokun is notorious for his ruthless techniques, and he stands as the cornerstone holding back the demonic cult. However, the cult's forces are endless, vast enough to rival the combined strength of the 9 sects. Gokun fights valiantly, but the numbers of the demonic cult begin to overwhelm the Kunlun sect. Just when it seems the tide is turning in favor of the cult, the joint sect arrives with reinforcements alongside the Tang clan. The powerful forces of the joint sect, bolstered by the Fire Realm Master Taehyeo, force the demonic cult to retreat, at least temporarily. The combined strength of Taehyeo and Gokun tips the balance of the war in favor of the righteous factions. But as things seem to be going too smoothly, a treacherous plot unfolds. One of the elders from the Tang clan betrays them, poisoning those who opposed his scheme. The traitor is none other than Muchin's father. As the poison takes hold of one of the elders, he curses Muchin's father, calling him worse than a dog. In response, Muchin's father stands with his lackeys and his own crippled son, posturing as though he's some great power. With a snarl and gritted teeth, he apologizes, explaining that he did what he did because there cannot be 2 leaders in one group. Meanwhile, in one of the quarters of the Tang clan, the sound of loud hammering fills the air. The fatty blacksmith is hard at work, welding something into a weapon. His full concentration is on the task at hand, but as the rhythmic clang of the hammer echoes, his mind drifts back to a conversation he had earlier. Yeon-myeong had approached him with an offer to join the Tang clan as their official blacksmith. The fatty blacksmith, shocked and overwhelmed, struggles to process the offer. Sweat beads on his face as he stammers in response, telling Yeon-myeong that he would be honored to work for the Tang clan. But there's a catch. He's curious about what happened to the demon-slaying sword he had gifted Yeon-myeong. Yeon-myeong, now visibly nervous, admits that the sword broke. The moment the words leave his mouth, the fatty blacksmith's face contorts in disbelief, his eyes widening. Though it saddens him deeply to learn that his final masterpiece has been destroyed, the fatty blacksmith also understands that the sword had fulfilled its purpose. Its ultimate goal was to end the Black Death Alliance leader's life, and it succeeded. Despite the loss, the fatty blacksmith takes pride in knowing that the sword carried out its mission. Yeon-myeong reassures him that a sword of such caliber could only have been made by a craftsman of his skill. This, in part, is why he came to recruit him. Before the fatty blacksmith can begin crafting for the Tang clan, however, Yeon-myeong has something to show him. Later in the Tang family manor, Yeon-myeong presents a strange object, the horn of a Yu Giljan. The fatty blacksmith's jaw drops in shock as he stares at the horn. Yeon-myeong, sensing his astonishment, tells him that explaining its origins would take too long, so he gives a quick summary. It's the horn of a mythical beast. Yeon-myeong adds that he requested the Tang family smiths to forge a sword using this horn, but no matter how high they heat the furnace, the horn refused to melt. He wonders if the fatty blacksmith can handle the challenge. The fatty blacksmith, clearly confused and troubled, is momentarily lost in thought. Noticing this, Yeon-myeong asks if something is wrong. The fatty blacksmith apologizes, explaining that he was simply deep in thought. He then reveals that since the horn comes from a mystical beast, it carries spiritual energy, making it impossible to forge using ordinary methods. To work with such a material, it must be reimagined, as he puts it. Yeon-myeong, still not understanding, listens as the fatty blacksmith continues. The horn needs to be forged with cold, not heat, a concept that may sound absurd, but is rooted in the nature of mystical beasts. The blacksmith explains that while the horn is a material, it is also a living thing. Exposing it to extreme cold could provoke a reaction similar to extreme heat. The world, he says, operates on the principles of yin and yang. Yeon-myeong is taken aback as the blacksmith further elaborates. Just as a metal blade is tempered with fire, an element opposite to its nature, the horn with its yin attribute may respond to its complementary element, cold. Intrigued, Yeon-myeong decides to give it a try. He plans to infuse the horn with cold energy he has collected from Miso, thinking about how he hasn't seen her since his return and planning to check on her once this task is done. Yeon-myeong then channels the cold energy into the horn, and the temperature in the room drops dramatically, freezing half of it. The fatty blacksmith, in shock, watches in disbelief as the horn reacts to the cold energy. The horn seems to be alive, responding to the influence of the energy. When Yeon-myeong finishes, he instructs the fatty blacksmith to strike the horn with a hammer, but warns him to be careful not to touch it with his bare hands. The blacksmith, now cautiously holding a hammer, strikes the horn. To his surprise, the horn deforms, leaving a visible dent in it. Yeon-myeong, pleased with the result, tells the fatty blacksmith that the rest is in his hands. The blacksmith examines the horn and notes that it's too small to be made into a proper sword. However, Yeon-myeong isn't concerned with the length of the blade. He tells the blacksmith that a dagger of this size will be more than enough. To him, the length of the blade is not the most important factor. Back in the present, as the fatty blacksmith continues hammering the horn with unwavering dedication, his thoughts drift to the demon-slaying sword. He believes that the sword has fulfilled its purpose, and now it is his turn to forge a new blade, one that will take its place. His eyes gleam with determination as the hammer strikes the horn, his resolve growing with every blow. Meanwhile, in Xinjiang, one of the old leaders of demonic cult is enjoying a drink while ranting arrogantly. This oldie turns to the lady beside him named Maui and mocks her, saying she never ceases to impress him. He tells her it is enough to make him understand Emperor Xuanzang's obsession with Yang Gaifei. Maui tells him that this is a little disappointing as he is comparing her to a woman who ruined her lord and her country. She insists that she is fully devoted to him, not just in body, but in soul, as she has pledged herself to the divine cult. The oldie laughs, acknowledging his mistake and calling her devotion into question. He tells her there is something important she must do for him. Her eyes widen with surprise, and she listens closely as the oldie explains that she knows that the cult is currently at war with the Kunlun sect, and they are facing significant obstacles in their bid to reach the Central Plains. Although Kunlun's strength is formidable, the real threat lies in Gokun, a master of the Fire Realm. And with Tagyo joining forces with Gokun, breaking through has become even more difficult. But as they say, even in the drought, there is rain. He reveals that an Edler from the Tang clan has reached out to the cult and specifically requested her assistance. This revelation shocks her. She had not expected them to want her help, though it is clear that her skills are valued. The oldie continues, praising her medical expertise, which has even earned her a reputation in Sichuan. He mentions that the head of the richest merchant group in the region once offered a fortune to cure his son's incurable disease, but it was she who succeeded, healing him in a single day. Now, the merchant is one of the cult's most loyal supporters. Flattered by the compliment, Maui chuckles. The oldie adds that her potential is too valuable to waste, and even the Tang clan recognizes this. She winks one eye at the oldie and tells him that if the cult leader commands it, she will do whatever is necessary. Then she asks who it is she will be treating. The oldie responds that this elder has requested her to heal the permanently paralyzed arm of one of his grandsons. She leans closer, intrigued, and asks what they will receive in return for this favor. The oldie, smiling slyly, tells her that the Tang clan will offer them the 10 poisons of their family, a set of deadly poisons capable of killing even Fire Realm masters. Maui is taken aback by this offer, her expression turning serious as she asks if that's truly all they are offering. The oldie elaborates, revealing that the poisons are not his main interest. His true plan is to use them to eliminate the 2 Fire Realm masters currently standing in their way. With a wicked smile, he tells her that by killing them, he will secure an unchallenged path to the Central Plains. And that was it from today's video. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment next part down below to see what happens next. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.